Titus, the founder of Intellect. We're an independent automotive research and analysis company, and we've been asked by this dealer to give you a road test and review of the 2012 Ford Mustang. All right, I'm going to come clean. It's impossible for me to do any kind of walk-around road test or review of the Mustang and not smile the entire time. This is a fun car, and quite candidly, a lot of my career has been tied to this very automobile. I want to remind you, in April 17, 1964, Mustang was introduced, and it set sales records overnight that have yet to be eclipsed. This product found a buyer in a hurry. For myself, well, over 350 racing hours in this particular chassis, and of course 11 professional wins and 1 professional driving championship. So yeah, I have a fondness for the car. I like what it says when you drive it. And in particular, I like what Mustang does in terms of the market it can reach. Case in point, it's not as elusive as a Ferrari or a Jaguar or a Porsche. It's attainable. And it's just fun to be with. You don't have to park it and be worried. I know, it's just a pleasant car to own. To that end, let's say you're on a budget and you just want the fun of it. Well, guess what? They've got a V6 version, a base model version. Fun car. And you can even get it ordered up in terms of options. It's even available as a convertible. For V8 fans, and boy do I sit in that club, guess what? They call it the GT. And it too is available as a convertible as well. And the big buzz as of late, particularly amongst the magazines, has been the introduction of the Boss. The Boss has a big history back in the 70s in motor racing. And of course, historically, it has one of the more powerful engines that you can buy as well. So a good Boss Mustang, well, guess what? The Hypo version comes with 444 horsepower. So yeah, that one's about getting down the road. And the good news is they haven't made a convertible out of that one just yet. That said, there's even an upscale version of the Boss called the Laguna Seca, a very famous track in racetrack in Northern California. Now, for those you just flat need to get to the movie theater in a hurry, well then clearly a Shelby GT Mustang is the way for you to go. You know, at 650 to 750 horsepower, that should get the job done. That big a rush, I'm not in. Now, let's talk about some other key issues here. When you have a car of this nature, you want either a manual or an automatic. You know what? The times have come that literally automatics now outsell manual transmissions at a rate of about 4 to 1. So automatics, which have become quite good, are really the popular choice in here. And the good news is you can get a 6-speed automatic with this. But for those of us who love changing gears and just feel like that's part of the driving experience, you know what? You got a 6-speed manual gearbox available. The balance that Mustang strikes, and why I think it's so endearing to those who want one, is it has a level of refinement and a certain level of lack of refinement. And I think that balance is what makes it like so much of a driving experience. You can't even drive a Mustang out of your driveway that you don't feel like you were involved, that it was just fun to go do. Just starting them makes it fun. So that's an interesting balance to strike. I should also mention that Mustang has more car clubs around the world, and if you go to like a Barnes & Noble, look at the newsstand, there's more Mustang magazines than any other publication out there. The following for these cars is just, well, almost cult-like, and I understand why. But not just the engines are what make Mustang special. It's the package overall, particularly the road feel and the way it works. Let me show you. We're going to talk about suspension for a second. You know, one of the key balances to Mustang is not just engines, but the chassis and suspension as well. And I realize for a lot of people this is unglamorous stuff, and you'll have to pardon my enthusiasm, but I'm a fan of this level of automotive engineering because it has such an influence on the product you ultimately drive down the road. The front suspension is what we refer to as a modified McPherson strut. The spring is actually over the top of the shock on center. That really gives you good feel and good ride quality. It's a very durable front suspension. Good news for long-term ownership. It's a rack and pinion steering car, and I love the roll coupling they've come up with. You really feel the linearity in the steering. You put in 15 degrees of steering, you're going to get 15 degrees of reaction. And that feel, that read back into the driver just gives you more confidence. You're on top of the car. You know more about what the car is doing. And the details get as exciting as, well, how do you deal with disc brakes? If you're going to give a car this much go, you better give it some whoa. And to do that, 4-wheel disc brakes, fully vented. Why fully vented? Because brakes can get very, very hot. 1,000 degrees is not uncommon if you're really hustling down the road. That said, how do you get them cooled down then? Well, because they are vented, the high pressure air in the fender goes into the brake, helps cool it down. Now you want to get that air out of here? Well, Ford pays attention to the design of the wheels on Mustang and actually uses them an air pump. They pull that air out of this fender well and off of that brake and into the stream of air going by the product. That's the subtlety of detail that is Mustang. Like I said, a balance of refinement and some unrefinement make this car just so much fun to drive. You know, I just want to take a second to give credit to something I think they deserve a lot of credit for. Ford, in designing the Mustang, made it a point that only a hardened enthusiast is going to drive down the highway and be able to tell a V6 base Mustang from a full-on 5-liter 302 GT. I like that. I like that people who are aspirational to Mustang but can't afford $40,000 or $50,000 Mustangs can come in at the entry level and have a car that looks just as good as anybody who spent the big dollars. The key differences are obviously under the hood and the kind of power they make. Talking about subtle details, this is one that Ford deserves a lot of credit for because they do it on every car they make. When you drive down the road, you're driving into other people's tire noise. That can be very annoying. So what they do to help reduce that, because remember, the air comes off of here, bang, lands on this window, just on the other side of this happens to be where your ear is sitting. So to make it quieter inside, this little vortice seat, which is designed to put what they call a boundary layer of air here, that pulls noise off the cab. Subtle detail, very important in end use. Now this shape is, well, kind of a fastback design, if you will, and they come with, or available with, and even the V6, a rear spoiler. That's not just cosmetics, that actually does create more downforce on the back of the car, makes it handle better and feel a bit better. Shall we go to the interior, or more accurately, shall we get in the cockpit? Because that's what it's like in a Mustang. I'm sorry. Every time I get in a Mustang, my heart rate comes up. In fact, if you get in a Mustang and your heart rate doesn't come up, please call 911. You may be in trouble. This is such a special feeling, and I don't deny it. As I said earlier, I've spent over 350 combat hours of racing these cars. This is home to me. This really is like a fighter jet cockpit. It's all about communicating to the driver. It's such a key part of what makes Mustang so special. Just the way it talks to you and the way it responds to you. That's what makes this car so special. Now look, I've spent a lot of time talking about the technology that I love. The powertrains and the gearboxes and of course the brakes and suspension system and even the aerodynamics of a Mustang. To be fair, I should talk about some of the tech that matters so much to so many buyers out there today. And that of course is on the topic of connectivity and of course audio systems. To be fair, of course, coming from a Ford, you would expect Bluetooth and sync. That's just part of what and parcel of what they've made famous. Of course, this vehicle actually has the capability of plugging in an MP3 player, and there's even audio auxiliary set up for it, so you can communicate with this thing any way you need to in terms of music. And on the topic of music, I should tell you, they've got a number of different audio systems available, but the top of the line for them they refer to as Shaker, and if you've ever heard it, you'd know why, because it'll shake you. It's 1,000 watts of 10 speakers in here, and well, frankly, you haven't heard Wilson Pickett sing Mustang Sally till you've heard it in a Mustang at 1,000 watts. In fact, the best way to test if it's actually on, if you've got blood running down the side of your ear, it's probably working just about perfect. Very, very strong stuff. You gotta love a car that'll tell you what kind of shape it's in. It literally will give you a vehicle health report. And on that topic, it will go 1 year or 10,000 miles between oil changes. I laugh at that because if you own a Mustang, it ain't gonna take you a year to go 10,000 miles. I'll guarantee it. The flexibility here and the capability in terms of nav systems, and of course, all of this being voice activated, so important today in terms of reduction of driver distraction. Now, let's go down our grading system. Auto Intellect does approach even cars that it loves like this with a fairly strict code of what we are looking for. We usually start with value, and you gotta, what I love about Mustang is from the V6 base all the way up to the Shelby, there's a Mustang for everybody's budget. I love that fact. It just, I don't know, it makes this car so accessible to people. And then of course, safety. You know, just because a car is fun doesn't mean it should be compromised on its safety side. And we look at that very seriously. To that end, all the key technologies, all the appropriate airbags that you would expect, you know, standard ABS disc brakes, fuel inertia cutoff switches, belt tensioners, what Ford refers to as a personal safety system, dual stage airbags depending on your position, size, and weight. Again, all the key safety factors that you would anticipate from any product from this car company are here, and we think that's nothing but good news. Performance, what do you say when your base engine's 305 horsepower and your hot rod motor's 440 horsepower? Oh, and you can go a notch further at the Shelby level and get 650 horsepower. I think the word performance pretty much takes care of itself. And then of course there's handling, and that's what a Mustang's about. It should handle, even with a V6, it should still handle and feel good. Boy, this thing checks off handling no problem. And of course, that leads us to our last one, and that's convenience. And one of the things I love about a Mustang, and I've had a lot of forms of exotic cars, it's not fussy. It's not going to nitpick at you. You know, it takes care of itself. I like that fact that it's just not a car you have to be worried over. This thing will do its job. It's convenient to own. Now, in terms of this thing being a 4-passenger, I wouldn't want to go, well, all the way to Nome in this thing. That's a pretty small back seat. Holds a briefcase real good, or fairly short people for a fairly short distance. It's got a good sized trunk. The seats do lay down and makes that pretty flexible. But overall, what makes this car so convenient to own is it doesn't make it hard to own. I gotta love that. You know, it just sitting here, it just reminds me how much fun these cars are to drive. Whether you're racing them or just driving them to work, this is special. Just had to say in closing that nobody buys a Mustang because they needed a car or just transportation. You buy a Mustang because you wanted something special. Every day you get in this car and it reminds you it's okay to have fun when you're on the road. Listen, if you've got any questions regarding either Mustang or any product you're looking at, be sure and contact us at autointellect.com. Thanks for listening.